All right, Tushar, we are live. Hello. In the midst of a pandemic, when the world is battling the greatest crisis, it's important to talk about something positive. We, as architects and designers in built industry, should talk from our perspective of how do we envision a better world. Good morning. My name is Architect Guneet Singh Khurana. I welcome you all for today's talk. Archistudent is a free knowledge sharing collaborative portal for the growing community of architecture and design. I would like to thank IIA Punjab chapter, ASHRAE Chandigarh chapter, A3 Foundation, Lovely Professional University, VIT University, Polytechnic College for Girls Jalandhar, GNDEC Architecture Department Ludhiana for their kind support for this session. For all those who are watching us live, I would request you to kindly write your questions in the chat box. We'll be taking up Q&A along the session. Can architecture heal and provide answers in these testing times? Is it possible? Is it doable? What does it look like? Does it mean pursuing sustainability aggressively? Or, as the topic suggests, going even beyond? Let's discuss beyond sustainability as we move towards regenerative architecture with the architect Tushar Mittal. Tushar Mittal is an architect, author, and a sustainability consultant, an alumnus of National University of Singapore. He has worked in both private and public institutions in India and Singapore. He has been involved in research on additive manufacturing with academia and won a design award in 2018 in Milan and has served as a guest jury at National University of Singapore. Sustainable development is the masterful balance of meeting our own needs without jeopardizing future generations' ability to do the same. It's a very apt quote given by somebody. So, to start with our discussion, I would like to ask one thing from you, Tushar. When did you think of going for sustainable architecture as your mainstream?
First of all, thank you for having me, Guneet. It's been a lovely discussion before this panel, and when we were talking before. And yeah, as an on the question, I think on someone who's following the climate change debate and the world around us, it is a natural progression that you try to do things better. You try to understand how you can make things which are currently going in a certain way to do it slightly better. So I think sustainable architecture has been ongoing for the last 2 decades now, as in some form discussion. Probably we have not heard much about it in India, but otherwise there has been thinkers, authors, and great master architects who have been talking about it. So I think that's what drives me towards that path. And to be honest, when we see things around us, it definitely does make sense to think that how we can do better, how we can make things better.
Very right. So, next, what comes in is as we all know that after COVID-19 outbreak, it's been a very tough time for everyone around the world. A doubt comes in mind: can architecture heal and provide for answers in these testing times?
I think when we say this, we are kind of putting a lot of responsibility on architecture. But to be honest, as a true believer in this profession and as someone who's passionate about it, I think we can provide some answers, if not all answers, because of course, We can't really be providing a remedy to the disease. We can't really provide the vaccine. So
Right.
that way we are kind of handicapped in some way. But can we envision a better world? Can we see that roads, our infrastructure, the way we have been at times tripled in so many ways, can we do better? Of course we can. And I think architecture there comes in as a very important step where a lot of intervention can be made. If you like to allow me, then I can just probably present a snapshot of a few things
Sure,
that
sure.
I
Go
think
ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
is a way forward.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Uh, just give me a second. Here I'm sharing my screen. Right. So where we say, what is a better word? What exactly is the definition? Because from your point of view and from my point of view, it can be really different. So
Mhm.
I'll share just my thoughts on it. And I think everyone is free to imagine how they could envision their better world. So for me, it's a lot of more greenery, clean water, somebody who's taking care of our energy needs, and probably we are growing our own food. Now, if you ask me if any of this is possible in a single building or in architect's domain, probably you'll laugh off and say that, hey, it's out of our scope. Why are you putting more things onto us? But I think it is all doable. As in, there's always a question of how are these things possible? But when you have buildings like this, sorry, I'm not commenting on the aesthetic. Everyone is free to like, or if they enjoy this building, then perfectly all right. But when we have stuff like this, as in we have buildings facade with all set up with a lot of air cons and the way they are going, there is something definitely wrong here.
Right.
It's not that somebody has renovated this building. There are even new buildings coming up, and we still end up doing stuff like this. So
Hmm.
this is definitely architect's fault here. So sorry if I'm being harsh on my fellow seniors and people who have done it before. But I think we also need to be very critical of what we do. So that's why I say that, and we see these places all around. And I don't know if I can call it architecture, but to me this looks like a big signage design in some way. And to be honest, not very aesthetically done as well. So now, if you ask me when we are doing stuff like this, what can be done better? But I say that there are things that has been done better, and we need to just kind of go towards them and try to learn how those things were done. Can buildings be a hub for greenery? And when I say greenery, just don't take the potted greenery as greenery, but something where you can have biodiversity thriving. uh, then green in the midst of a in the midst of a in the midst of a city, then something that provides a respite for your birds, for your different kind of biodiversity, or just kind of providing some fresh air in your cities. Then water, can we take care of water? That means can we clean the water that we are at least using in our own buildings? Then energy, probably it's a very simple one, that whatever you consume, because now in the current scenario, our buildings consume a lot of energy. Even just to operate buildings, we are providing them constant energy. So definitely something can be done about it. And I'm a very simple believer of this movie Roti Kapda Makan. The roti and kapda are probably out of our scope. Definitely, we can't be a farmer. So when it comes to architecture, we could only take care of the third one, the makan. So can we really do better makan? If you'll ask me, my answer to this is yes, we can, and we should. Because if you look at the carbon emission, I think we need to, before we go into the sustainability debate, we need to be very sure what exactly are we talking about? What exactly is sustainable? Because the carbon emissions from the construction industry are huge. And we are partly responsible for that. As to be honest, architects are the de facto head of any construction project, for that matter, in our country as well. And definitely, we need to be the thinking heads of how these emissions we can do slightly better. Of course, most of these emissions come from the materials that we choose, but that's totally on us, how we design our buildings. So it's a very simple debate that has been ongoing, and people have written over it. that human settlements are basically thriving on green natural systems. We are kind of already exceeded the Earth's biocapacity by 70%. And if by 2100, we are going to lose as in half of our original forests and a lot of our biodiversity. Imagine a world without the greenery, without the forest, and without the biodiversity. We are just going to be already last year has told us very well that we all have to be moving with our own oxygen cylinders, and that's now not even 2100. That seems like a plausible reality very soon. So I think we need to be very mindful about the energy consumption or the energy we consume currently in our buildings. And the water consumption, can we do something about it? Yes, we can. And here comes the respite regenerative architecture, but probably I'll wait here and let you continue with another question. Hi, Guneet.
I think there is some glitch over here. All right. So another question which comes to mind is how important is sustainable architecture? How to design a sustainable building?
Uh, if you ask me, sustainability in its true sense or literally means to sustain. That means if we are doing something this way and we need to sustain it slightly longer. I think that's what we meant by the exact term sustainable. Sustain. And when it comes to sustainable architecture, the way we have been portraying or the way we have been learning about it is more about there's a benchmarking. So if a building consumes certain energy and now you do a lot of things and you consume less energy than what it was before, then you call yourself sustainable. So in a way, you're still sustainable because you're doing better. You're better than what was the benchmarking. Uh, so if you ask me, sustainable architecture is important. Yes, it is. It has just set the right foundations because our buildings, as we discussed, are consuming and are taking a lot of energy from our systems, and we need to do better. And how to design a sustainable building? I think it's more of common sense. It's more of things that you see around you, that how you have to not go far to procure a certain material for your building. Because in a way, when you travel or when you get a particular product from, let's say, from a far place country, then you're kind of getting the carbon emissions in the transportation. So how are you making your building sustainable? And I think that's the way about it. It's more of common sense. It's more of what we all know. It's already uh, knowledge existing in public domain. It isn't something very wild, but I think we just need to be a lot more mindful about it. Yes, that's the short answer to this one.
Right. Now, there's a question which says, what's wrong with sustainability? Or to say that we need to go beyond sustainability.
Yeah, I think that was a natural progression because I've been criticizing
Yeah.
sustainability so much. I think the idea being that beyond sustainability is a very evocative term. In a way, it kind of draws your attention and say, hey, now we are saying we have to go beyond sustainability. So I think it's important that we understand what's wrong with this one. What's wrong with the whole sustainability term? Because I was explaining before, sustainability or the word sustain simply means to sustain. And if we are going to just sustain the way we are currently going, I'm sorry, but as we have seen in the slides before, we won't have something good for our future generations to show because the current emission levels, the current energy consumption levels, the current water consumption levels are so high. And the benchmarking is somehow set so poor. So anytime you do slightly better, you call yourself sustainable. But whereas you need an overhaul, you need to really understand and go back to the basics and say that, for example, this building, how much energy is it supposed to consume? Is you just don't talk about the benchmarking. So last time it was consuming this much, and now I'm doing better. No, you need to go back to the basics. So for a very simple example, the air cons, air conditioners, ACs as we call here. Every year you have a new product launch, and you say that this one has 5-star rating, this one has a 4-star rating, and you try to get always the better one. It's a wise choice. Everyone should do it. So there is less energy consumption. But are we really questioning that at certain parts or at certain points, do you really need a condition? So I think it's going towards that debate. Similarly, for cars, you might have a better car which consumes less fuel, which is more eco-friendly. But at the same time, we really need to be thinking, do we still need more cars? So I think this stems from this direction that we need to go beyond. We need to really be thinking what exactly is the benchmarking, where we are wrong, and how architecture can be a lot better. Yes, I think that's why I say we need to go beyond sustainability.
Uh, then we may proceed towards what made your inclination towards regenerative architecture. It's a term which actually, if I talk, so I was not much aware about this term earlier, but later on when this concept of sustainability and saving the planet comes, and it when it we discusses it with the architecture which is going on right now, so this term comes into the mind. So what made your inclination towards regenerative architecture?
Uh, I think a lot of the credit on how I got introduced to this would go to my alma mater, NUS, and my peers for that matter, and the way we have been always discussing the latest and how we could do better. And at least in our built industry, what is the future? How we can really make an impact. So I think that's where my inclination, it all started there. But regenerative architecture is, to be honest, something that is not very new. It has been ongoing. People have written over it. People have written books over it. Somehow we have not really heard much. Uh, so definitely there is something wrong on how we are consuming our best, as in the things that we should be consuming. But I think simply as a regenerative architecture, as the name suggests, is about restorative justice in the context of built world. It is simply the practice of engaging with natural world that forms the building blocks of architecture. Somehow we need to be making sure that we use limited resource and work on replenishing and enhancing our environment. I think somehow that's a term that has totally lost, that we consume energy and then we say, okay, can we consume less? And that's all about it. But why are we not talking that can we replenish many of the things that we consume? So I think that ways regenerative architecture comes into play because it's a process that really makes you think from a systems thinking point where the needs of community along with the integrity of nature are at the forefront of design. So nature comes as in a part of your overall design package. It isn't something in the separate portion. So you come more from a systems thinking point of view. Uh, it is simply based on the principle of give more than you take, because currently we are just taking, and every effort needs to do more good simply instead of just the less harm that we say that we are doing in a sustainable building. And I think in regenerative approach, we consider the site, the context, the systems, the energy, the building, and ecology as a part of the same program. They're not separate domains. They're just simply existing together because in reality, they all do exist together. Because to be honest, as we all know, architecture doesn't exist in isolation, but it is basically a one complete entity. So I think architecture is not detached from ecosystem. Rather, the systems are designed in a way that they share linkages between them. So I think that should be the approach. I think if I got too
Right.
heavy, I'll try to decode it
No,
later.
no, no, no. Actually, it was very aptly explained. So, when we talk about this, so do we need to redefine the architecture as a term?
Uh, I think I'll go with this one because we need to really redefine the way we as architects perform in the industry or how we talk about architecture. Because architecture, as the term defined, is the art and science of designing and erecting buildings. That's what the literal meaning is, and I'm quoting from a dictionary. Uh, Put me wrong, but I remember this was
Yeah,
when I was
we used to
writing
study
about the
this the
book.
same time. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually go to different dictionaries and found out what exactly you call architecture.
Right.
So they say it's the art and science of designing and erecting buildings. And here I say that this is wrong because the definition of architecture becomes more comprehensive when we include the systems in which the building exists. Because the buildings are not going to exist in isolation. There's going to be environment around it. There's going to be an ecosystem. There are going to be living beings around it and a community at large. So even if you're doing a private parcel or a private residential villa, there's a community who's around that building, who's going to be impacted by the way you are designing. And the correct process of conceiving architecture is a very linear model where energy is consumed to build a building, to operate a building, and even to destroy a building. So it is based on the consumption model that has been prevalent for years. So I don't uh, say that architects are at fault for this one because it is a model that needs to be altered. And if we must sustain a healthy planet, uh, we have to make sure that this linear model of consumption is no longer valid. Yeah, so I think, am I making sense here? So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
So,
definitely saying that the architecture needs to be taking care of all these systems and the way in which it exists.
right. So that means it values a lot, right? If we discuss about regenerative and in terms of sustainability and going beyond it, right? So you wrote a book on beyond sustainability.
Yeah.
So can you give us a brief about what it is all about and
Uh,
how you perceive the idea of writing a book?
there are so many questions packed in this one. It's a heavy one. So I'll try to give answers to each one of it. So the first one is why I decided to write a book. So the simple answer is it has been an ongoing project. It was in my bucket list ever since I was reading and learning about it and back in college days as well. And somehow lockdown last year provided that ample opportunity to pen down a lot of my thoughts. And I have been doing a lot of reading. Uh, and before that, I was engaging with a lot of students when I was going back to university in one way or another as part of guest jury at NUS, and otherwise also have been interacting with students at different platforms. So there comes this need that we need to pen down, and most of us need to be talking about these things. Because when I realized that when professionally I was working, to be honest, there was some great work happening, and even in the domain of all of this. But I realized that we still need to write, or we still need to talk about it a lot more. And it was more of a personal project because I wanted to get clarity in my own head about the philosophy and where exactly it's going. Uh, so I just thought of writing it down, and somehow uh, it came in the form of a book. And to be honest, the people who have really read through and gone through it, they found it very interesting. And I have received some great feedback on this one. And so, yeah, I think that's a journey about the book. Sorry, what was the next question? Guneet, you'll have to remind me again.
Give us a brief about what it is all about. So, your book, what all it consists of.
Uh, to be honest, it is not something very new. People have written about it, regenerative architecture, regenerative design. And in a way, they are great masters and great thinkers and great architects who have done work in this domain. What I have simply done is basically pen down my thoughts on it as a young professional, because I believe all of us who see this and people who are young professionals and people who are in the industry and are going to be in the industry or the students, all of us really need to find better ways of expressing ourselves. And I found that regenerative architecture is definitely doing, or is basically the philosophy that talks about making sure that we do something better in a way that we do some kind of restorative justice. We replenish our resources. because when we see the carbon debate and the carbon emissions and the climate change debate around us, we at times feel so helpless. And there, I think it came from that strong urge to do something about it. And then I found that there are actually ways possible in our own industry, in my own field that I'm passionate about. So that's why I decided to uh, be writing about it. And the book is simply about the collection of ideas, how architecture can perform better, and there is a toolkit or there is a suggestive ways of how we can do these things better. So it isn't just talking about the questions and how this is wrong and how this can be done, but I'm also talking about solutions and solutions that exist in our world. So it isn't a book that is talking about future. So currently, now sustainable architecture is going on. 10 years later, we'll have a regenerative architecture. No, I'm talking in the present context. I'm saying that there are things that have been done in projects which are really well, really good, that we need to really inculcate, and how in a package we could really redefine architecture. I think that's all about it. And I would suggest all of you, because it's very difficult to say a lot that's written in the book in just 5 or 10 minutes. But yeah, this is all how it stems, and going into different projects. There are discussion on projects, on how those projects were in the domain of regenerative design, how they were able to add a lot more value, not just in the energy segment or the usual ones that we kind of put in our portfolios. But let's talk about how can architecture provide political value, social value, human value. So I think those are the very important points that I have discussed in the book. And now I remember the next question was about the values, because I'm a firm believer that values is very important. And it might seem simple, but we tend to sometimes oversee. See, for example, in politics, it's about election process. It incorporates about ethics, right? And in my personal capacity, it's about integrity. So, and we in India are grown up with values. That's what we call sanskars, right? I think
Yeah.
if I'm looking for the Indian word to the values, I think it's the sanskars. So, value is what define us, and it's the guiding principles. So they define how we continue to live, and no matter what the context is, what the goal is, but what the big picture is about. That's what you call the dharma in some ways, right?
Yeah, very right.
Yeah, right. So, because without any values, it's difficult to create any value. Now, I'm talking about a different value here. Let me ask you a simple question. Why do most of us work? Now, I think, sorry, this is not a interactive platform. So,
No, see,
let me pick an answer for
what?
you. Let me pick an
Yeah,
answer for you, and then probably we can discuss it.
yeah,
Some of us work for money. That's totally all right, because everything needs to have a financial model to it. Then, like many of us work because it gives us joy. That gives us satisfaction. And third, there is a third category as well, who say we work to add value in our cities. We work to make sure that we live the built environment better the way it is. So I am really touching upon the segment of people who say that they work because they want to work, or they want to make the world a better place, or at least the built industry that we work in a better one. So when we leave, it isn't existing of what we see around. It is slightly better. And I think we all need to make attempt in that direction. Now, if you ask me, the first two people who work for money or who work because it gives them joy, are they wrong in some way? No, definitely not. There are no right and wrong answers here. It doesn't matter if you choose only just point one, or if you say that you want to work for money, that's totally all right, because somebody needs to pay the bills. And so, but in the end, I assume that all of us are here who are currently listening to this talk and are interested in this topic, because we all kind of are passionate about architecture in some way. We want to celebrate architecture, and we want to know what exactly and how we can perform better. So I think it's a value that alone creates value. So if you have the right sanskars, definitely you can create a lot more value in architecture.
yeah, very well said. So values are very important. If you go, it's not depends upon whether which field you are in or where you are. Value matters. Exactly. So there are few questions by the students. One is from Vandana Jain,
Yeah.
and she says sustainability should become part of the life. Then only it will be acceptable concept. What simple steps we can do in our house to start the concept?
Uh, I think I'm going to tweak the. Thank you for the question, Vandana. I'm going to tweak your question a bit and would ask you to do a lot better than just sustaining your part of life and try to do a lot better. That's the first one. And I think it is an acceptable term. People are talking about it, and I'm a strong believer that as humans we want to do better. Yet if somebody hasn't told me that this is wrong, how am I supposed to know कि ये गलत है? It's as simple as that, right? And people are looking for better ways. Every time there is a new model or there is something new that's been discussed, people try to bring it into their life. Now, when I was talking about the air conditioning or about those little examples, every time there is a new product and everyone claims that hey, this is the right thing to do, people tend to do that. And when you ask me what simple steps we can do in a house to start with the concept, I think we need to reduce our wastage. We need to see where exactly is our energy consumption going. Now, if you need an aircon, please switch on the aircon. But in architecture, as architects, we could design buildings, or there has to be a way where we could take a lot of help from the passive design technique. So, of course, nobody is going to change your house in a hurry. But I think these are small things and mainly common sense. Are you consuming the right energy? Are you making sure that you're not wasting all your energy in putting your aircon, but the glasses are overheating your building? Then don't just put the aircon on number 5 throughout the day. Make sure that you change your glass. If the glasses are not insulating in some ways and you are kind of getting trapped in a green in a in you're just trapping the sun inside and then you're cooling your building, you're kind of wasting your resources. So I think these are very commonsensical and very basic things. And if we delve into it, if we try to really go into the basics, I think we'll find the right answers there.
I think you have given a very apt answer to this question. So another one is from Shivam Kumar, and
Yeah.
he's saying that historic architecture like North Hindu architecture and South Hindu architecture is beneficial in
Right.
this
Say
case.
again, is
So
what?
is historic architecture like North Hindu or South Hindu architecture? As we know about the Dravidian or some other styles of architecture which were prevalent in the older times. So is it beneficial to do those in these days? Like if I remember, there were a lot of terms which we used to do. We uh, give these screens. We used to have some jhalars and some other very sun cutting elements and all. And there were some other construction techniques which were being used in the older times, which used to make the building, as we have said, as we were discussing about the air conditioners and all. So there at that times we were not being using those things. So are those beneficial at present times?
I think the simple answer to this question is, do you think those architecture is better than the way we are constructing today? The simple answer is yes. Because when you talk about those things, the jalis and the overhangs and the sunshades, they were not just there for aesthetics, they were serving a purpose. It's functional. And if you ask me, everything is wrong the way we are doing things today, no. No, I'm not someone who is very pessimistic, but someone who's optimistic. So even in this one, from historic architecture, if you see a lot of this is very sensical, and I'm not talking about the style of architecture because that's a different debate. If we should be inculcating or if we should still be following that same style of architecture. If it suits our senses, then go ahead. Because to be honest, to me, any temple that has been done before looks a lot more beautiful than the kind of architecture we see. The mall that you have today, I'm sorry, I just don't feel that we as architects are contributing anything to our cities. They look horrible. They are just signboards. Are we as architects trained to design signboards? Because as I shown in the picture before, they are not even beautiful signboards. So I'm sorry if any of the picture belongs to someone who has done those projects, but to me, as a normal layman, to someone who's driving a car or to someone who's just passing by, that doesn't look appealing. And the value of architects are not increasing as a profession. As a professional, I'm worried when I see those things and someone asks me, "What do you do?" I don't want to call myself an architect when I'm standing to ugly building and I know that's been because I know it's coming to our profession, it's coming to us. So definitely there's a lot of sense in what how things were perceived or how things were done before. We are as architects and as creative minds should feel free to adapt things that suit our current needs. Now, if you want to just do the same building again, I think it's not the right approach, but rather to find ways or to see where exactly we were right, what you could do today, and how you could do today. Because probably if the same thing, if you had to do it a long time back, probably you would spend 100 days in doing the simplest thing. And now with the technology, you could do the same thing in 10 days. So definitely you should do that. Now, because I have also worked on additive manufacturing, which is basically 3D printing, and I really value the that part of the world as well, or that innovative ways as well, where we need to make sure that we use technology to our benefit, not just for the sake of using technology, because that's also something that we need to be very mindful about. Not just use technology because it looks fancy, not just use parametric design it because it's cool to say so. But think about it. Does it make sense to do here? Yes. If it does, then go with it.
Right.
So,
Adding to this, you said about the additive manufacturing and the
yeah.
3D printing. So while you were in Singapore, and I know firms nowadays they are more into model making through 3D printing, right? Before starting up a project, they first analyze everything through 3D printing and parametric modeling. So you might also have a slight touch to the parametric modeling as well if you have like if you have experienced anything of that sort. So give us a brief about, I would like to understand about the parametric modeling and parametric architecture if you know anything about it, and the 3D printing as well, because in India what we right now is having this in this field we are not using parametric modeling or parametric designs architecture in terms of our new buildings or in terms of our new designs which are coming up. So, how? Uh, Give us a brief about it, Shinu.
Uh, yes, thank you for asking, Guneet. But to be honest, it's a whole new world or it's a whole new topic in itself, and we could discuss it for hours. So if you
Yeah,
have
that
thought
is
for it,
that is a
but
whole new entity to it. I know exactly, but
yes. But to give you
all
a
those who
very brief,
students, yeah,
yeah, but
yeah.
to probably give you a very brief, uh, just to very briefly summarize what I was doing or what this 3D printing to me is, or additive manufacturing as the official term is about. I think if you want to do the same thing that you could do conventionally through 3D printing, then it does not make sense. So, what is the value addition that you're getting from 3D printing? I think again, I go back to the basics because that has been my education that you need to go to the basics, understand what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right, and then find solutions to it. So, if 3D printing, you tell me that you want to do a very complex design, and that's not possible conventionally. Or if you do that conventionally, probably you'll be 100 days or 100 man hours. Whereas if you 3D print the same model or the same element, and you could do it probably in a few hours, then I think I'll go with a few hours. For a very simple reason, if it saves time, it means it saves energy. And we need to be mindful that how we can make sure that the energy consumptions are low or how we can save energy. And if there is value to it, that means a complex design which wasn't achievable or which the quality wasn't good, but now you could achieve it simply, then why not go for it? I think similarly, uh, in Singapore, most of the firms have started using 3D printing for model making now, because it's fairly a simple process and you could very well do it. It does help. Now it's just saving time, if you ask me. Is it a better model than the conventional one? I think that's a difficult choice to make, because you might not be getting the details that you were getting before. But I think that also depends on project to project or what exactly you want to achieve. So similarly here, if you ask me, should everything be 3D printed? The simple answer is no. Probably we need to again put a lot of mind and see where exactly it's needed and for what exactly you require that. Same goes for parametric
Right.
architecture.
So it is basically a very vast term if you talk about, and this it is more prevalent in the western side rather than here, and also in the some of the other Asian countries as well. So coming back to the topic we were discussing, so
Yeah.
Kritika has a question. She says that is there any alternative to RCC slab with equal strength in North India that is suitable and locally available too?
Hmm. This is a tough one, but I think there are solutions available. But again, to Kritika, before going for any alternative to RCC slab, just find a simple solution. If again, to do this alternative, you have to go to Austria to get that technology, then it does not make sense. But a simple solution, as in to be honest, I still consider myself a student, so I'm no expert on this one, but I'll try to just from the back of my mind, I could think of shingles, stone shingles or wooden shingles, and it has been prevalent in our country, locally or locally available, and they do provide some way similar strength. So it's somewhere equal, or we can say that it is comparable, and it has been done before, and they are locally available. And we still do buildings, with this kind of way when the RCC slabs are not even possible. And I'm talking about if you go uh, little up, or as in the hills or in the villages upstairs, in the top of Himalayas and in Himachal and all those places, you have beautiful villages which currently still don't use RCC slabs. So I think to Kritika, you need to find some solutions there because there exists a lot.
Right. So, so there are exactly as you say, there are a lot of solutions which we can come up with, and villages. When we talk about villages, so they use the primitive techniques to keep themselves like from the thermal insulation and everything that
Yeah.
is being involved. So to summarize our whole discussion, can you give us some pointers, like maybe 3 or 4 pointers, which we can take along with which all the students and the aspiring architects take along from this discussion as we are coming out to the end of the session. So give us a brief pointers of the whole of the discussion which you can take it.
Right. Uh, I think I can show you something, and that would put a because that's something I love a lot. Uh, yes. So there is something what you call as the ripple effect, as in if you and it has been explained. If somebody wants to read a lot more, then there is a person called Thomas Brand, and he explains it rather amazingly. What exactly is that? So I'll probably just share my screen again, and probably we can talk about it. Yes. So can you see my screen, Guni? Can you confirm it one?
Yeah, yeah, it's right.
So we as architects are trained to do the building, and we are pretty well aware about the site. So this is what our current influence is, right? This is what we all want to make sure. We do a good design, we do a good building, and then we make sure of our site plan. Many architects don't do the site plan as well, but anyway, most of us are trained to do this. Now, if we go slightly outside, there always exists a community outside it. If we could make sure that we could engage them in that building, it's going to create that ripple. Now, if there is a environment, because all buildings exist in an ecosystem, that's again a very simple term. We know about this, we know how to work around it, but probably we don't engage much. So if we could do that, because with the community comes the environment, we are existing in this, we are part of the same ecosystem, then we could really make that impact more. And wherever there is a community and environment, we are definitely going to impact the economy. That's something we are sure short of, because buildings consume a lot of money when they are built. So there's always a financial model to it. And where exactly is a where exactly there are people, that means there is voting, and there's economy, that means there is money. The politics comes attached to it. Now, if you see a simple building, if you ask me, really has the power to influence create those ripples, and that could really have a far reaching effect. So that's what the simple theory is, that we, as a simple building designer of that center portion, could really impact and create the large ripple that we are supposed to do. I think that's it on this one. And to anyone and everyone who's thinking about it, the simple answer is that read a lot. There are so many good things, that there are so many great architects and so many great thinkers who have worked, talked, and written about it. Probably we get so much ingrained in the Instagram and the reels and the whatnot, and to see just the pretty pictures, that we have totally forgot to read. So my simple suggestion is read as well. Try to read not just from similar sources or from same sources. Try to get diverse viewpoints. Travel a lot, and everything is not online. Trust me, there are so many things which is out there in the real world, and don't just confine yourself to same cocoon and the same set of architects friend discussing the same thing. Just diversify your views. Try to see what the others are doing. Try to see what the engineers are doing. Try to see what Tesla is doing. Probably we might not be able to help them or do something with them, but just try to expand your horizon. That's all. That's a simple suggestion. And yes, again, you can reach out to me. I love interacting with people. I love interacting with curious minds. So feel free to contact, and I would be more than happy to provide answers if I can.
Right. You have very well said that we need to move out of our confined environments and explore.
Yes,
Explore. While we explore, we get to learn a lot of new things. That is the main point. So, thank you, Tushar, for accepting the request and giving us your valuable time to share your knowledge about the field. Uh, I again thank you. And thank you to all the supporters and the people who joined us for this session. In the end, I would like to add a quote, Ban Ki-moon. Sustainable development is the path to the future we want for all. It offers a framework to generate economic growth, achieve social justice, experience environmental stewardship, and strengthen governance. Thank you.
thank you, Kuneet. Been a